Hi, my name is Amélie Marion. I'm a computer science professor, and today I'm going to explain the algorithm for counting votes in a ranked choice voting election. Ranked choice voting is a type of election where rather than voting for one single candidate, you vote for a list of candidates in the order of your preference. It has gained a lot of attention recently because there are several places in the US that have adopted ranked choice voting for their primary or local elections. In particular, New York City will use ranked choice voting for most of its primaries in this coming June 2021. There are many different ways to count votes in ranked choice voting election. In the US, typically, the algorithm that is used is the instant runoff or single transferable vote algorithm, and this is the one I'm going to present today. There are several reasons for switching to ranked choice voting elections. The main one is that it avoids expensive runoff elections in the cases where one single candidate didn't get the majority of the vote in the first round. Another advantage is that it prevents the spoiler effect, where you have a small candidate that takes away some vote from a more popular candidate, and that changes the outcome of the election. And finally, it has been shown to increase representation in elected officials. There's been several education campaigns that focus on how to fill a ballot. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to show a sample ballot that I got from one of those campaigns, Rank the Vote NYC, and you can check their campaign if you want more details. It's pretty self-explanatory. Rather than filling just one candidate, you're allowed a number of choices. In New York City, it's 5 choices. So here we have a sample ballot for mayoral election. Of course, all these are fake candidates. And you just fill the ballot, selecting one choice for your first choice, one for your second, third, fourth, and fifth. So now we're going to discuss how votes are being counted in a ranked choice voting election. And for this, we're going to do a mock election, and we're going to select the best candy. Imagine that you can only buy one type of candy wholesale for your party or to send to remote attendees of an event, and you want the attendees to decide what is the candy that they want. So for this, I selected 9 different candies: Reese Peanut Buttercup, a French candy that I like named Carambar, alfajores, which is a candy from South America, chocolate M&Ms, peanut M&Ms, white rabbit candy, Chinese candy, Twix, Snickers, and Mars. And the reason I selected these, of course, it's to emulate an election with various types of candidates. Here we have some candies that are not well known but may have some strong support within some subgroup of the population. Like Carambar, French people tend to like it. White rabbit would be popular with Chinese voters, alfajores with South American voters. You also have some candies that maybe some voters have a strong feeling for or against. If you're allergic to peanuts, you don't want any candy with peanuts. And you have some candies that have some similarities and maybe are, close enough that a voter that likes one likes the other, for M&M, chocolate, and peanuts. In this election, we have 100 voters. We're going to follow the votes of 5 of them and see how they transfer as we go through different rounds of ranked choice voting. The first voter is myself. My first choice is Carambar. If this were a traditional election with only one choice, I wouldn't have selected Carambar because I know that in the US, very few people know about it and it's unlikely to gather a lot of support. So I would rather have put my vote towards a candidate that I like that has a chance of winning. But in this situation, because we're using ranked choice voting, if Carambar is eliminated, then my vote will transfer to my next choice. So my first choice is Carambar, my second is alfajores, then chocolate M&Ms, fourth is Twix, and fifth is Mars. Yatin, her first choice is White Rabbit, a Chinese candy. Second choice is Snickers. Third, M&M's peanuts. Fourth, M&M's chocolate. And fifth, Mars bar. Shannon only put one choice. It's not clear whether she didn't understand that this was a ranked choice election or she doesn't care what happens with the election if her favorite candy doesn't win. But if peanuts M&M's gets eliminated, then her vote will not count anymore. Juan is allergic to peanuts, so he really wants to make sure that a peanut candy will not get selected. So he'll start by putting his first true choice, alpha-HOS, and then move on to his preferred choices, Mars bar and Twix. Then he actually likes Carambar, so he put his choice there. As his fifth choice, he would probably prefer White Rabbit, but he knows that White Rabbit is very unlikely to get elected, and if all of his other choices are already eliminated, that means that there's a high chance that a peanut-based candy wins. So he'll use his fifth choice to select the non-peanut-based candy that he believes has the highest chance of winning out of all the remaining candies that he hasn't selected yet. Then we have Paul, who selected chocolate M&Ms as his first choice, then Reese Peanut Butter Cup, Snickers, peanut M&Ms, and Twix. So we're going to see how their votes are being processed with the 95 other votes in this election. So a ranked choice voting election goes in round. The first round is something that we're used to. You just look at all the ballots and you look at all the first choices and you count them. In this case, we have 27 out of 100 voters who selected Reese Peanut Butter Cup as their top candy. 23 selected Snickers, 22 chocolate M&Ms, 11 Twix, 6 M&M's Peanuts, 5 Mars Bar, 2 each for alpha-HOS and White Rabbit, and I'm the only one who selected Carambar. There is one ballot that was deemed invalid, and we see it on the bottom right here, because the voter made a mistake and selected two first choice. And because this cannot identify what their true first choice is, the ballot was considered invalid, and we're not moving to the second choice. That ballot will not count at all. So at this point, the first round in ranked choice voting, we eliminate the candidate with the lowest number of votes. That's Carambar. And so we look at the voters who selected Carambar as their top choice. There's only one, it's me. And see how their vote will transfer. So my second vote is alpha-HOS. My vote will transfer from Carambar to alpha-HOS, and we'll see that in round 2, alpha-HOS has now 3 votes. So let's move to round 2. Now, alpha-HOS, as I just said, has 3 votes. All the other counts are unchanged because only 1 vote transferred from round 1. So White Rabbit is the next candidate to be eliminated. Yatin had selected White Rabbit as her first choice, so her vote transfers to her second choice, Snickers. And there's another voter that also had selected White Rabbit, and his or her vote also transfer. So we'll see that Snickers gets 1 more vote and has now 24 votes, the 24th one being Yatin's, and actually M&M's Chocolate got the extra transfer from White Rabbit. At this point, the candidate that now has the lowest number of votes is alpha-HOS. And so if you remember, one of the 3 votes is my vote that transferred from Carambar to alpha-HOS, and now because alpha-HOS is eliminated, it will transfer to my third choice, chocolate M&Ms. We also have one who selected alpha-HOS as his first choice, and his vote will transfer to Mars, his second choice. And there is one other voter whose vote will transfer. The next candidate to be eliminated is peanut M&Ms. And so I kept everything in the same order as the first vote, and you can see that Mars actually overtook peanut M&Ms, and peanut M&Ms had more first votes than Mars, but is eliminated before it. So we have one of our 5 voters who had peanut M&Ms as her first choice. Turns out she didn't have any other choice. Shannon had selected only peanut M&Ms. And so because she didn't have any other choice, her vote cannot transfer, so her vote goes into the exhausted pile, and only 5 votes will transfer, assuming that they will have selected a second choice. We now have 2 exhausted or invalid votes, Shannon and our original invalid vote, and the candidate that has the lowest number of votes is now Mars. But before looking at this, look at what happened in the top votes. Chocolate M&Ms is now in the lead. It kind of makes sense. People who like peanut M&Ms do like chocolate M&Ms, so chocolate M&Ms got a lot of transfers from peanut M&Ms. So at this point, 1 votes and others transfer. Whoever voted for Mars as their first choice will have their vote transferred, as we've seen before, And Juan, whose vote already transferred from his first to second choice, now has to transfer to his third choice because Mars, his second choice, is eliminated. And as we continue the process, we're almost at the end. We get to round 6. Twix is now the candidate with the lowest number of votes. There's actually one additional exhausted vote that happened when Mars was eliminated. So Twix is going to be eliminated. Juan, it was his next choice. So again, his vote will transfer. So his vote transfers from his third choice, Twix, to his fourth choice, Carambar. But Carambar was already eliminated, so it transfers once more to his fifth choice. At this point, it's chocolate M&Ms, which is still active. So his vote will transfer to chocolate M&Ms. Remember that Juan considered White Rabbit as his fifth vote, but decided to vote for chocolate M&Ms so that he would still have a say if the choice was among chocolate candy bars and peanut candy bars. And so that's what happened there. If he had selected White Rabbit had been already eliminated and Juan's vote would be exhausted. But because he selected M&M chocolate and M&M chocolate is still active, his vote transferred to M&M chocolate and Juan can still have a say in the result of the election. Round 7, only have 3 active candidates and we're eliminating the one with the lowest number of votes. And it turns out that it's Reese Peanut Buttercup. And if you remember, I kept the same ordering as round 1 in that chart. It was actually the round 1 winner. In a plurality election, Reese Peanut Buttercup would have won. In a majority runoff election, the runoff would have been between Reese Peanut Buttercup and Snickers. But right now, Reese Peanut Buttercup is eliminated. The outcome of the election will be between chocolate M&Ms and Snickers, and the decision will depend on how the 29 current voters for Reese Peanut Buttercup, how their votes will transfer to either Snickers or chocolate M&Ms. And that's how we get to the final round, where chocolate M&Ms ends up being the winner with 52.27% of the active final vote. Of course, after several rounds, we ended up having several exhausted and invalid votes, in this case 12, so it's actually slightly less than 50% of the total number of votes from the first round, but it's still higher than any candidate would have gotten in round 1. In this case, chocolate M&Ms was third in the first round, and it would not have been elected in a plurality election. Reese Peanut Buttercup would have been, and it wouldn't have been part of a runoff election, which would have elected either Reese Peanut Buttercup or Snickers. If we look at the voters that we followed, how their votes transferred, my vote went from Carambar to Alfajores to chocolate M&Ms, and my third choice ended up winning. Yatin's vote went to her second choice, and because her second choice was one of the final 2, she didn't get her preferred candidate, but she ended up having a say in who was going to be elected among the final 2. Shannon's vote got exhausted as soon as her only choice was eliminated. Juan's vote transferred quite a bit, but he was still able to weigh in on the final decision by selecting chocolate M&Ms, which is something that was important to him because he really didn't want any peanut-based candy. And finally, we haven't talked about Paul because Paul selected chocolate M&Ms as his first choice, so his vote never transferred, right? So in this case, Paul got his preferred choice, as would be the case in a traditional election, but he didn't penalize his first choice by adding additional second, third, fourth, and fifth choice because those were never even considered because his first choice was still active. I'm often asked what is the best strategy to order your candidates. And if you watch my video on the school matching algorithm, this is going to sound familiar, but the best strategy is typically to order them in your true order of preference. I rank my candidates in my true order of preference, and despite the fact that Carambar was eliminated right away, I was still able to weigh in the final runoff between chocolate M&Ms and Snickers because my vote transferred to my third choice. Similarly, you cannot penalize your preferred candidate by adding more choices to your ballot. Paul voted for chocolate M&Ms as his first choice. His vote never transferred, whether he had voted for no other candidate or the fact that he voted for some other candidates afterwards doesn't matter because his preferred candidate was never eliminated. Another thing to be careful is to not overvote or undervote. We saw in our first round that one ballot was considered invalid because it had two first choices. It's not always clear what would happen if you select just one first choice, one second choice, and maybe two third choices, whether your ballot will be considered invalid just at that point. I think that's most often the case, but that depends on your local board of elections, and you don't want to take that chance. Similarly, what has happened, for instance, if you undervote, you forget to select the second choice. Your ballot would probably be deemed invalid at that point. So avoid this and make sure your vote counts. Be careful not to overvote or undervote. Another strategy that I recommend is use your last vote for the lesser evil. In the US, you're typically limited in the number of candidates you can order, which means that if all of your candidates are eliminated, your vote gets exhausted and you don't have a say in the final outcome anymore. If you know that your 5 preferred candidates are likely not to make it to the end, and you want to ensure that you still weigh in on candidates you don't like as much, but you still have a preference, then it's worth using your 5th vote, your last vote in New York City, in other places it could be your 3rd vote, as a way to weigh in, as a strategic play to weigh in on the final outcome. In our example, Juan would have voted, if it were his true order of preference, for White Rabbit as his 5th vote, but at that point, besides White Rabbit, the only non-peanut candy that was still available was chocolate M&Ms, and he didn't believe that White Rabbit would win against any of the other peanut candies, and the only non-peanut candies that he thought had a chance was chocolate M&Ms, so he voted for that and was able to weigh in the final 2. And finally, don't waste your vote. We saw in Shannon's case that she only voted for one candy, peanut M&Ms. When peanut M&Ms got eliminated, her vote was exhausted. And so she didn't participate in the selection of the candy beyond that. That's fine if Shannon only wanted peanut M&Ms and didn't care what other candy would be selected if peanut M&Ms was not the winner. But in most cases, you have some slight preference among candidates that you may not like as much. If you don't select them and your preferred candidate is eliminated, then that's it for you. Your vote will not be a part of the next rounds of the election. Ranked choice voting in practice. It's been used in several countries in the world, and different locations in the US have been using it, typically for primary or local elections. Maine has used it for its presidential elections in November 2020. Now, of course, New York City will use it for its primaries, including the mayor primary in June 2021. So what do results of ranked choice voting elections look like? A study by FairVote shows that in about half of elections using ranked choice voting, the ranked choice voting rounds are never applied because a candidate wins with more than 50% of the votes in the first round. In the other half of the elections, in 12% of the case, we have a come from behind winner, which is a winner that usually was 2nd or 3rd in the first round, and through transfers of votes, jumped in first place, like we had in our sample election with chocolate M&Ms. One of the drawbacks of ranked choice voting elections is that it may take a long time to return the results of the election, as you have to wait for all the ballots to be accounted for to start the rounds process. This is because any new ballot may actually impact the order in which candidates get eliminated and votes get transferred. I explained that in more detail in a Medium article, which I linked to in the description of this video. So that's it for the description of the algorithm that is used to count votes in a ranked choice voting election. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.